There's a reason you always felt uneasy watching Scooby-Doo late at night. You told yourself it was just a kid's show. Talking dog, silly mysteries, people in rubber masks. But somewhere deep in your mind, something whispered that it was wrong, that something was hidden beneath the surface. What if I told you that feeling was intentional? What if Scooby-Doo was never really meant for children at all? In 2019, a former Hanna-Barbera archival assistant came forward on a now-deleted Reddit thread. She claimed to have found something during a routine cataloging project. Production documents from 1,969 original series Bibles and a single handwritten note tucked inside the first season's master files. The note read, "They won't understand what they're watching. That's the point. Keep going." It was unsigned. When she asked her supervisor about it, she was told to put it back and never mention it again. 3 weeks later, she was let go. Her post was removed within 6 hours, but screenshots survived. Let's talk about what you think you remember. A van full of teenagers and their dog, driving from town to town, solving mysteries. Every episode the same formula. A monster, some clues, a chase scene, an unmasking, comfort food for the brain. But watch it again. Really watch it. Count how many times the gang arrives in a town where something has just happened. Count how many times locals mention that the problem started exactly 2 weeks ago. Count how many times they're the only outsiders in town. The pattern is there. In 73% of original series episodes, the gang arrives within 24 hours of a mysterious occurrence. They're not solving mysteries. They're documenting them. A fan cartographer spent 3 years mapping every location mentioned in the original Scooby-Doo series, using context clues, landmark descriptions, and the rare mention of actual place names. What he found shouldn't be possible. The towns don't exist, but they're consistent. Every Coolsville, every Crystal Cove, every nameless coastal village, they occupy the same relative positions across episodes. He created a map, and the map formed a pattern, a spiral, starting somewhere in the American Midwest and slowly rotating outward, counterclockwise, over the course of the first 3 seasons. Each mystery slightly further from the center, each town slightly more isolated. By season 3, they're in places that don't appear on any real map, and the monsters get stranger, less like costumes, more like something else. There are episodes that don't exist in any official capacity, but people remember them. Hundreds of people, across different countries, different decades, different broadcasts. They remember the same episodes. Episode 14B, The Lighthouse Keeper's Warning. Episode 23C, Where the Shadows Stay. Episode 31F, The Town That Forgot. These episode codes don't fit the production sequence. There is no B or C designation in the original numbering system. Yet people describe them in detail. In The Lighthouse Keeper's Warning, the gang arrives at a coastal town where a lighthouse keeper claims something lives in the beam of light itself. The episode supposedly ends without an unmasking. The gang just leaves, in silence. No joke from Shaggy. No. Another mystery solved from Fred. They get in the van and drive away, and the lighthouse keeper watches them go, still pointing at the light, still screaming. In Where the Shadows Stay, the monster is described as being made entirely of shadow. It doesn't chase the gang. It follows them, slowly, always in the corner of the frame, getting closer. The episode allegedly ends with the shadow reaching the mystery machine, and then cuts to black. When the image returns, the gang is in a different town, starting a different mystery, and nobody mentions what happened. People who claim to have seen these episodes report the same feeling. A sense that something was removed from their memory, that they watched something they weren't supposed to see, and someone tried to make them forget. Fred Jones is the leader, always has been. Handsome, confident, obsessed with traps. But have you ever noticed that Fred never gets scared? Not once. Not in a single episode of the original run. Daphne screams. Velma gasps. Shaggy and Scooby run. But Fred remains perfectly calm. Even when monsters lunge at him, even when he's alone in the dark, even when the unmasking reveals something that should be impossible. There's a scene in episode 23, A Night of Fright is No Delight. The gang is being chased through a mansion by what appears to be a phantom. Everyone scatters. For exactly 3 seconds, the camera holds on Fred's face. He's alone in a hallway, and he's smiling. Not a nervous smile, not a brave smile. A smile of recognition, like he's seeing an old friend. But it gets stranger. In the original animation cells, Fred's ascot changes color, not between episodes. Within them, it's orange in most scenes. But in moments of high tension, when the monster appears, when danger is closest, it turns red, deep, blood red. Frame-by-frame analysis confirms it. The color shift happens in 37 episodes, always during the same moments. When Fred is closest to the monster, when he's setting a trap, when he's about to unmask something, as if the ascot is reacting or responding to something only Fred can sense. Daphne Blake is known for 2 things, being fashionable and getting captured. Danger-prone Daphne, they called her. Always the one kidnapped by the monster. Always the one who vanishes. But here's what nobody talks about. Where does she go? The episodes show her being grabbed, show her screaming, show the gang searching, but they never show what happens to her in between. There's always a gap. Sometimes 5 minutes of runtime, sometimes 10. The gang searches, finds clues, sets a trap, and then suddenly Daphne reappears, usually tied up somewhere, usually just before the climax. But she's always different. Her hair is perfect, her makeup untouched, her clothes without a single wrinkle, as if she was never really in danger, as if she was somewhere else entirely. In episode 29, The Haunted Horseman of Hagglethorne Hall, there's a continuity error. Daphne is captured wearing a purple dress. When she's found, she's wearing green. The error was noticed, and the scene was supposedly corrected in later releases. But the original broadcasts show it clearly. Different dress, same perfect hair, same calm expression. One animator, in a podcast interview years later, mentioned that Daphne's absence scenes were always animated by a separate team. A team that worked in a different building. A team that never interacted with the main animation staff. He said they called it the Daphne Protocol, and that the scenes they produced were kept in a separate vault. When asked what was in those scenes, he went quiet, then said, "Things that couldn't be shown on Saturday morning television. Not violence, not anything explicit, just things that couldn't be explained. Things that would raise questions the show wasn't prepared to answer." In 2003, a collection of original animation cells was auctioned from the Hanna-Barbera archives. One buyer noticed something odd about a cell from episode 41. On the back, in pencil, someone had written, "Velma knows. She's always known." The buyer contacted other collectors. 11 more cells surfaced with similar annotations. Different handwriting, different episodes. All about Velma. Watch her eyes when she loses her glasses. She's not looking for clues. She's looking for symbols. Velma is documenting everything. Check her notebook. Here's the thing about Velma's notebook. In the original series, she's constantly scribbling in it. The animators gave it surprising detail for a background prop. Freeze frame analysis shows actual writing, not legible, but consistent. The same symbols appear across multiple episodes. Circles within circles, spiraled patterns. The same spiral from the map. But there's more. In episode 33, Scooby-Doo and a Mummy 2, Velma loses her glasses. Standard gag. She crawls around on the floor, feeling for them. But if you watch her eyes, she's not looking down. She's looking at the walls, at the hieroglyphics, and her lips are moving. Like she's reading them. Like she can see them perfectly without her glasses. The blindness is an act. A researcher analyzed every instance of Velma losing her glasses across the original series, 47 times. In 43 of those instances, she's alone with one other person when it happens. And in each case, that person is revealed to be the villain. She's not clumsy. She's testing them, watching how they react when they think she's helpless, studying them. But studying them for what? In her notebook, visible in episode 19 for exactly 2 frames, there's a list, names, every villain the gang has unmasked up to that point, with one word written next to each name. Confirmed, not caught. Not guilty, confirmed, as if she was checking them against something. A database, a prophecy, a list she already had before they ever started traveling. There's a theory that Shaggy and Scooby aren't cowards. They're the only ones who remember. Think about it. Every episode, they're terrified of the monster. But not before they see it. They're afraid the moment they arrive in town. The moment they step out of the van. Before anything has happened. Like they already know how this story ends. There's a scene in episode 18 that was edited out of most reruns. Shaggy and Scooby are alone in the mystery machine, waiting for the others. Scooby turns to Shaggy and makes a sound. Not a typical Scooby noise. The animators gave him a full sentence of mouth movements, deliberate syllables. One animator claimed, years later, in an interview, that there was supposed to be dialogue there, that Scooby was supposed to speak clearly, in perfect English, warning Shaggy about what was coming. But the audio was never recorded, or it was removed. The scene remains. Silent, except for ambient sound. Shaggy stares at Scooby for a long moment, then nods slowly, like he understands perfectly. But let's talk about what Shaggy and Scooby eat. Obsessively, constantly. In every episode, they're consuming massive amounts of food. The running gag is that they're always hungry. But what if it's not hunger? What if it's something else? In folklore, there's a concept called grounding. Eating food from the physical world to anchor yourself to reality, to prevent yourself from slipping into other realms, to stay present. Shaggy and Scooby eat constantly because they're trying to stay here, in this reality, trying not to slip back to wherever they came from. There's an episode, episode 27, that Snow Ghost, where Shaggy and Scooby get separated from the group. They're trapped in a cabin during a blizzard, surrounded by snow, no food. And for the first time in the series, they stop being afraid. They become calm, almost serene. Scooby sits by the window, staring out at the snow, and Shaggy says something strange. Like, Scoob, do you ever wonder if we're supposed to be somewhere else? It's played as a joke. Scooby shrugs. They find some food, and the moment passes. But the tone of that scene is different, quieter, more melancholic, as if, without food to ground them, they started to remember, started to drift back to whatever truth they're running from. The van is more than transportation. It's the constant, the one thing that never changes. While the gang ages slightly across different series, while animation styles evolve, while voices change, the mystery machine remains exactly the same. Same psychedelic paint job, same flowers, same mysterious emblem on the side that nobody ever explains. But here's what's strange. The van never breaks down, never runs out of gas, never gets stuck. In 41 episodes of the original series, they travel thousands of miles, through deserts, mountains, swamps, snow, and the van never fails them. It's always running, always ready, always waiting. In episode 16, there's a scene where the gang is being chased. The monster is gaining on them. Fred floors the accelerator. And for a brief moment, 3 frames the speedometer is visible. It reads 0. The van is moving at incredible speed, wheels spinning. But the speedometer reads 0, as if they're not actually moving through space. As if they're moving through something else. One former storyboard artist mentioned in an interview that there were early concepts for the Mystery Machine, designs that were rejected. In one, the van had no wheels. It hovered. In another, the interior was larger than the exterior, impossibly large, with rooms that stretched back into darkness. These designs were deemed too confusing for children, but elements of them remained. Watch carefully in any episode where they show the gang inside the van. Count how many times they're shown sitting in different configurations. Count how many times the interior seems to shift. Seats appear and disappear. The space expands and contracts. In episode 38, Velma walks from the front of the van to the back. It takes her 11 seconds. The mystery machine is 15 feet long. The math doesn't work. Unless the inside is bigger than the outside, unless the van is a door, and they've been traveling through it all along. In any given episode, there are townspeople, witnesses, suspects, background characters who deliver exposition and then disappear. But if you watch closely, they repeat, not as the same characters, but as the same faces, the same character models used over and over, different names, different occupations, but identical features. This is normal in animation, reusing character models to save time and money. Except in Scooby-Doo, the reused characters appear in specific patterns. A man with a distinctive scar appears in episodes 3, 12, 21, and 30, each time as a different person, each time in a town further along the spiral, each time acting more strangely, more withdrawn, more afraid. By episode 30, he barely speaks, just stares at the gang with wide, terrified eyes, as if he recognizes them, as if he's been waiting for them to arrive. A woman in a red coat appears in episodes 7, 14, 28, and 35. In each appearance, she's younger, not slightly younger, significantly younger. By episode 35, she's a teenager. The same face, but decades younger. She's the one who usually discovers the monster. She's the one who calls for help. She's the one who brings the gang to town. And in every episode, she thanks them. Says the same line, "Thank God you're here." Not "Thank God you came." Not "Thank God you're helping." Thank God you're here. As if their presence is what matters. Not their investigation. Not their abilities. Just the fact that they exist in that moment, in that place, fulfilling some requirement that's never explained. Every episode ends the same way. The gang captures the monster. Fred or Velma reaches up and pulls off the mask. It's always a person underneath. Always. But watch what happens in the moment before the unmasking. There's always a pause. Sometimes just a frame or two. Sometimes longer. The monster goes completely still. And if you look closely, really closely at the monster's eyes through the mask, they change. Just for a moment. Something in the expression shifts, from aggressive to resigned, from threatening to pleading, like whatever is wearing the costume knows what's about to happen and dreads it. Then the mask comes off, and it's always a person, the caretaker, the lawyer, the business partner, someone with a motive, someone rational. But there's a moment frozen in the animation where it could have been something else, where it was something else, and then it wasn't. An audio engineer who worked on the restoration of the original series noticed something disturbing. In the moment before each unmasking, there's a sound, buried deep in the audio track, below the music, below the sound effects, a frequency so low it's almost inaudible. Almost. When isolated and amplified, it sounds like breathing. Rapid, panicked breathing. Not from any of the gang, from something else. And then the mask comes off, and the breathing stops, replaced by silence. Absolute silence for exactly 1 second. Before the villain begins their explanation, I would have gotten away with it too, if it weren't for you meddling kids. Always the same phrase. Always the same rhythm. Like a script they're compelled to follow. Like an incantation. Sealing whatever really happened, making it safe, making it explainable, making it human. In 2015, a file dump from a deceased CBS executive's estate included correspondence from 1,970 letters between the network and Hanna-Barbera regarding Scooby-Doo. Most were routine, ratings reports, merchandising discussions, scheduling changes. But one letter stood out, dated the 15th of March, 1970. The Network Standards and Practices Department sent a memo to the producers. It read, "Episode 28 is unacceptable for broadcast. The ending implies that the monster was never caught. This violates our agreement that all mysteries must be resolved with rational explanations. Please revise and resubmit, or the episode will not air." Episode 28 inches. The official release is titled, "A Night of Fright is No Delight." A standard episode. The mystery is solved. The monster is unmasked. Everything is explained. But if that's episode 28, what was the original? A production assistant who worked at Hanna-Barbera in the early 72nds recalled an episode being pulled. She didn't remember the title, but she remembered the imagery, a mansion, a family inheritance, and a phantom that appeared differently to each member of the gang. To Fred, it looked like his father. To Daphne, like her mother. To Velma, like herself. And to Shaggy and Scooby. She said they saw something that made them try to leave, try to get back to the van, but the mansion doors wouldn't open, and the phantom just watched them, never chasing, never threatening, just standing there, waiting. The episode allegedly ended with the gang escaping, but no unmasking, no explanation. Just the 5 of them in the van, driving in silence, while behind them, in the mansion window, the phantom watched. Still wearing all 5 faces at once, the episode was rewritten, made appropriate, made safe, but the original animation cells were never destroyed. They were filed away. And according to the assistant, sometimes late at night, animators would pull them out, just to look, just to remember what they'd created, before they were told to make it make sense. Don Messick voiced Scooby-Doo for nearly 30 years. Casey Kasem voiced Shaggy for even longer, and both men, in rare interviews, said strange things about their characters. Messick, in a 1985 radio interview, was asked what he thought Scooby-Doo was really about. He paused for a long time, then said, "I think it's about the fear of knowing, not the fear of the unknown. Everyone gets that part wrong. It's about being afraid of what you already know to be true, and having to pretend you don't." The interviewer laughed, treating it as a philosophical joke, but Messick didn't laugh. Casey Kasem, in a 1992 documentary about voice acting, mentioned that he received letters, hundreds of letters from children. Most were fan mail, but some were different. Children writing to tell him that they saw things in Scooby-Doo episodes that weren't supposed to be there. Faces in windows that no one acknowledged. Shadows that moved independently. Symbols in the background that spelled words. Kasem said he kept these letters, that he compared them, and that the children were describing things that weren't in the broadcast versions. Things that shouldn't exist. He never explained further. But years later, his daughter found boxes of these letters in his personal archive. She mentioned them in a podcast, said her father had highlighted specific ones. Letters from children who all reported the same thing. In certain episodes, Scooby-Doo looked directly at the camera, directly at them, and his eyes were human, completely, unmistakably human. For just a frame, just a flash. But they saw it, and it terrified them. Frank Welker, the voice of Fred, had his own experience. In a convention panel in 2008, he mentioned that there was one episode he refused to record. He didn't say which one, but he said that when he read the script, something felt wrong. The dialogue was normal. The action was typical. But between the lines, in the stage directions, there were instructions that didn't make sense. Instructions about tone, about pauses, about moments of silence where Fred was supposed to acknowledge the observer. When he asked the director what it meant, he was told not to worry about it. Just read the lines. He refused. The episode was never produced. At least not with his voice. But he said sometimes he wonders if they made it anyway, with someone else, and whether it's sitting somewhere, waiting. The original Scooby-Doo Where Are You? Ran for 2 seasons, 25 episodes total. Then it was cancelled, or so the official story goes. But production documents suggest a third season was planned, fully scripted, partially animated, and then abruptly cancelled. Not due to ratings, the show was successful. Not due to budget, merchandising was strong. The cancellation came from above, from the network, from standards and practices, with a single explanation. Content inappropriate for target demographic. A writer who worked on the planned third season spoke about it once. In a small animation podcast in 2011, he said the third season was going to be different. Darker. The gang would start to notice patterns, start to question why they were always in the right place at the right time, start to wonder about the spiral. The episodes would feature recurring elements. The same mysterious figure appearing in backgrounds, the same symbol appearing in every town, the same feeling of being watched. The season finale was titled The Mystery of the Mystery Machine. The gang would discover that the van had been tracking their movements, recording everything, transmitting data somewhere, and when they tried to stop traveling, tried to go home, they'd discover they couldn't remember where home was. Couldn't remember a time before the mystery machine, couldn't remember how they met. The finale would end with them opening the back of the van and finding a door that shouldn't exist, a door that led somewhere else, somewhere they'd been avoiding, somewhere Shaggy and Scooby had been trying not to remember. And they would have to choose, keep traveling, keep solving mysteries, keep pretending, or go through the door and learn the truth. The writer said they animated the final scene, the gang standing in front of the open door, light pouring out, not normal light, something else. And one by one, they stepped forward, Fred first, then Daphne, then Velma, and finally, Shaggy and Scooby. But Shaggy and Scooby don't look scared. They look relieved, like they're finally going home. The scene was completed, fully animated, color corrected, ready for broadcast. And then the order came down. Destroy it. All of it. The scripts, the animation, the voice recordings, everything related to the third season. The writer managed to keep his script, hidden in his personal files, but the animation was gone, erased, as if it never existed. He said the strangest part was that 3 weeks after the cancellation, he received a package at his home, no return address. Inside was a single animation cell. The final frame from the destroyed finale, the gang stepping through the door, and on the back, written in that same pencil handwriting from the original production notes, they finally found it. Now we can start over. He never knew what it meant, but he kept the cell, and sometimes, late at night, he'd look at it and swear that the figures in the image had moved, just slightly, a little further through the door, as if the animation was still playing, somewhere, somehow, still moving forward, still searching for whatever waited on the other side. So here's what we're left with. A children's cartoon about a dog and 4 teenagers solving mysteries. A show that ran for 2 seasons and became a cultural phenomenon.